Welcome to our SQL learning session. Today we'll be talking about analytics, grouping ranges of data. This is a more involved topic. That's why we'll take one step at a time to get through to the end. So let's get started. I have already initialized all the required SQL. Now let's start from the top. Here's the first statement we need to check. We have a table called lab samples, and it has a columns called date taken and sample ID. These are two columns it has and 13 rows. It is some sample IDs, sample address taken, and each sample has a unique ID. Some samples were taken consecutively, but some distance between there's some gap between the day for some samples, such as 10 and 14. There's a gap, and 16 and 19 there's a gap. Now we need to create an output where we need to segregate data into buckets, and those buckets would be have all the dates consecutive. The sample would have taken in consecutive days. There'd be no gap between those samples. And if there are those buckets, then we need to separate them out and say that in this bucket, this is a maximum date, and this is a smallest date, and this is how many samples are there in this bucket. We just have to do that. To get to that end, we need to start with the initial data, which we already did. Now, second step is to see which data, what data is we need to define an indicator where we need to check what's the difference between previous date and current date. To define the lag, we need to define how much lag there is. If there's only one lag, then it's fine. If there's more than one lag or not one lag, then that's a problem. So we need to find an indicator column for that. And that's why we'll take a column called date taken. Date taken in a column that we are interested in. And we need to define a column where we need to take a date taken and subtract the previous date from it, and we'll see what's like. The lag will give us the previous date taken, 1 comma 1, 1 comma date taken. Let's just do this and let's see what we get. It should give us null or error. Now we need to order by certain column. Order by, let's do sample date. Let's do sample ID. And let's see what we get. We have a null in the first one because date minus null is null because it's undefined. We don't know what it is. Therefore, we'll do 1 minus date taken, such that we'll get 0 there. Now this will give us what we need. what it's saying is that date taken doesn't have any procedure, so it is subtracting itself, so then the difference is 0. This minus this is 1. This minus this is 3. That's what it's saying here. This is the indicator column or gap column. Let's say gap column. What are we going to do with this gap column now? We're going to do a case statement such that if the value is 1, then it's going to be null. The first step is to create a bucket or label these data by the first date of that particular bucket. How do you do that? Can you guess? Let me show you. First, we will have our indicator column, which is gap column, and on top of that, we need to do a case logic. Case when date taken is not equal to 1, then we need to print out null. Else, we need to print out the same date, whatever date we have, the date taken. And in this way, we have created a logic where we have introduced a null wherever there's a 1, and if it's not 1, then it's a whatever date taken column represents. This is what we have, the first value of the particular bucket. Now we need to print out the value, not only the value here, but we need to print out the value for the rest of the column. How do we do that? Can you guess? Let me show you. You have to use the first value logic in this query. Since we only have used the analytical function here, the lag, we can use the first value, which is also analytic function top of that. That's why we need to create a subquery or CTE on top of this. Let's create a new query or CTE on top of this. Let that be a new table, and we'll define as this query, and let's do this, and let's select new from everything from new table. It's working. Now what we need to do is we need to take this gap column and apply a new analytic function top of it. That now what we're going to do is we'll take the date taken again, which is this function here, and I'm making my own twist to that date taken and gap column and it's going to be the first value from here, the first value gap column over order by, partition by order by. order by date taken. Let's see what we get here. Now this is a gap column again. Gap indicator. Let's say it's a start date. Now we have buckets. Buckets that is represented by this one, which is December 1st, 2015. Second bucket is December 1st, 2015. That's the first bucket. Now we need to partition by that. Partition by what? It shouldn't be first value, it should be max value because we want to see maximum value from current to the previous. Therefore, it has to be maximum value, last value. We can do last value. Last value. That should give us what we need. Or maximum value. Maximum value, max. Because in the SQL, a string and null has a lower value than any string. Therefore, that's why we can say that we can a max value. If it's the other way around, we should do min value. Now we have a buckets. We have labeled these buckets with the first date of that particular bucket. This is the second date of this is the second bucket with the first date of that particular bucket. In this way, we have created new buckets. What is the next step in this? Remember, we need to create a output where we have a start date, we have a different buckets, and we are start date will be the first value in that bucket, and end date will be the last value in the bucket, and number of samples in that bucket. Now we have a start date already. We also have a date taken. Can you do group by here? What needs to be done to create the output from this? Can you think for a second? Now we have labeled this. We need to create one more table called new table 2 or some other name such that we can use this information, the label we have created, so that we can create on build on that and create a second layer of SQL. Therefore, we will create one more layer of SQL and name that as final table. Let's name it as a final table. And let's select everything from final table. Let's check everything final table. And what we need to do is we need to group by this, the bucket. Let's say bucket bucket. We need to group by the bucket. Group by and we need to count it. Number of samples. Let's say date taken will be the for this particular bucket. Second, minimum date taken. Number of samples. And that's why we have this bucket with a started and ended, a number of samples in that bucket. And this is exactly what we're looking for. Now, if you go on with this, we'll see that this is what they have. It should be minimum value here, and maximum value here for each bucket. And these are a bucket as defined here. And we need to order by the start date. Order by start date. And you should give the bucket in serial order 1, 4, 10, 16. And this is exactly what we need. In the end, let me quickly summarize what we learned today. We learned about grouping ranges of data. Grouping ranges of data based upon the similarity between the each group. And how do we define the group? We define a group where the days between samples are consecutive. This are many applications in real world, such as stock market or price, for example. And when you group this data, we group using Analytic SQL. For that, we need to build two layers of SQL. One is a base layer, where we indicate where are the groups, and second, we build on that, and we get the on top of that will be the second layer where will be the maximum value. We do the case statement that such that when we have an indicated column, we build a case statement such that whenever the indicated column is not one, then we just put the corresponding date taken value on the indicated column. We'll replace that, and that is going to be our base SQL. We build the new table. We build the SQL on top of that, such that the max value for a particular column will be the current row plus unprecedented unbounded preceding, and will what's the max value for that range or range of rows. And once we have that, it will populate all the nulls with the some string in that range, and it will keep on doing that. If it finds some newer string, then it will populate that instead. In this way, and when we were doing that, we have to do the order by the date taken, so that we only get the most in ascending order, such that we have the most maximum value in the current row. When we populate, we are taking the most maximum taking the current row. In this way, we build the final second layer. On top of that, once we have the label, the each bucket with the started of that particular bucket, then we'll just group by that particular bucket and take the maximum and minimum of that bucket and just display the result what we need. So that's all for today. I'll see you next learning session. Thank you so much.